Job Searching 101 for software developers, or how to focus on the right thing at the right time. Now, by the end of this video, my goal is that you understand the full job search pipeline and how to debug the right part of that pipeline with real data, which should result in less stress and better outcomes for you. Job searching is a linear pipeline. It is basically the same across most companies. On one end, you begin exploring the job market and applying. And at the end of the pipeline, you negotiate and accept your offer. This pipeline I've broken down into 4 primary steps. Step number 1 is the application. This is where your resume comes in. Step number 2 is screening calls and technical assessments. Step number 3 is interviewing. And step number 4 is negotiating and hopefully accepting your offer. Now, different stages of this process require different skills. For example, sometimes the emphasis is on soft skills, and other stages will test more of your technical skill set, or a combination of both. Now, let's dive deeper into each step of the process. In step 1, you will be applying to a bunch of different jobs, and here you need to start with your resume. Resume writing is a bit of a mix of soft and technical skills. You're trying to succinctly highlight only the relevant information, and you may need to tweak your resume for different postings, but it's not absolutely necessary, depending on something that I will discuss later in this video after we cover all of these steps. Step number 2 is screening. This stage is where a recruiter will reach out to you over email or maybe a phone call. Usually you'll hop on like a 15 to 30 minute call. This part is usually non-technical, but they may ask you some technical questions. This is becoming more and more common. Some companies will send you a take-home assessment at this point, and those can range in difficulty. Typically, they're more on the easier side here. Step number 3 is interviews. At this point, you may be doing 2 to 5 interviews that are usually an hour to 2 hours each. Different companies will do this differently, but I would expect a mix of technical and behavioral interviews at this stage. And step number 4 is negotiations. This is where you get an offer. You will need to negotiate things like your base pay, paid time off, working hours, and so on. These negotiations will be different depending on the company. Now, what I want to emphasize here is I don't want you to skip any of these steps. This is a common mistake I see people do when they tell me about their job hunting experience. They may be stuck on step 1, applying to jobs, and their resume is not great. But meanwhile, they're spending time learning negotiation techniques. Like, don't do this. Maybe think about the next step, but focus on where you're currently struggling the most. But how do you know where you are struggling? You need to track your metrics. And to do that, you should record every single application that you submit. And also record every step of the way. Did you get a callback? Did you get invited to an interview? And so on for each one of those applications. You can record this data in a spreadsheet like Excel or Google Docs. Pick your favorite. It really doesn't matter. Don't focus too much on this, but do record the following: application date, company and role, link to that role, any of the important dates, like when you got your callback, when you got any emails, interview dates, definitely, and take notes along the way. And finally, hopefully you can record how many offers you get. The reason this is important is because metrics will help you out. They will allow you to understand where you are struggling the most. Let's say 10% of your applications will result in a screening call, and 5% of the screening calls will result in interviews, and 1% of those interviews will result in negotiations, and 50% of those you end up taking the job, for example. The way you could debug this pipeline is to look at where your weakest points are. And let's say in this case, you may realize that my application is doing really good, the screening calls go okay, and then I don't do well in interviews at all. I barely pass any of those technical interviews. At that point, you will know that you need to zero in on that specific part of the pipeline. And so, like in this case, if you're very happy with your applications resulting in 10% of callbacks, then that's fine. You don't need to adjust your resume for every job. You don't need to mess with your resume at all at that point. So you could leave that alone and continue doing what you're doing there, but then spending most of your prep time on technical interviews or behavioral interviews or whatever that might be. Additionally, you will come prepared to job interviews. I have seen enough interviews to know that sometimes applicants will forget which role they applied for. You don't want to have that sort of impression on your interviewer. So you really need to review the job title, the company, the role, the listing, all of that, and your resume, of course. And so if you're tracking all of this data, you know which resume you used for which job application, you know what the job description looks like, and so on. So when you're coming to an interview, you will be much better prepared. When you are applying to 60, 80 jobs, it's very, very easy to lose track of which resume was sent to which company and where you got a callback from. It's just very easy to lose track. You really have to track this data if you want to optimize your job search and come prepared to every interview. Now, I've made videos that dive deeper into different parts of this pipeline, like, for example, how to write a resume or how to get referrals. I encourage you to check those out if you're struggling with any one of those steps. I hope this helps, and I will see you in the next one.